We have to examine what's happening at the moment because this is about a parliament that is falling into ruin. And it's not about one single party. And I know there'll be people in the comment section who are saying, oh, Labour is proving to be filthy, or the Labour's no better than the Conservatives, the choice was false. Yeah, the choice was false. And the choice was engineered by the media. And I think it's a much bigger issue. And people in the comment section have said, you're always very negative, Tim. Yeah, I am, I'm afraid. Negative or cynical or maybe satirical, I would like to hope I am. But I hope I also call out what is wrong. And I don't see a lot that's right. And that's the problem. When I see something that's right, doesn't matter who does it, I call it out and I say, well done. But I don't see a lot of that at the moment. It's easy, almost comforting, to revel in the sacking of Andrew Gwyn, isn't it? To imagine the accountability, that accountability has finally prevailed in the murky corridors of Westminster. But this is no victory. This is a moment with the other councillors being sacked. This is a moment of dismay, a testimony to how deep the rot runs. We should not be celebrating the sacking, but gawping in dismay at the fact that so many elected officials appear to condone or appear to have contempt as manifest by Andrew Gwyn for the people who they represent and who elected them. The WhatsApp scandal that has engulfed Labour is merely a symptom of a deeper malaise. It's a political system that we've got at the moment that is rife with corruption, with laziness, and a patronising disdain for the electorate. Ben Habib of Reform, Ben Habib's recent remarks capture the frustration of many. Political office has become a preserve of the elite, a self-serving class, people who, for the most part, have done nothing else except for politics all their life. A self-serving class that treats public duty as a careerist exercise rather than a mandate for service. Basically, they've forgotten who they are. They think that they are in charge. They're not. They're there to serve. They should learn something by looking at the various names of the Pope. It doesn't matter how grand you are the servant of the servants. And the WhatsApp scandal has revealed the casual derision with which Labour politicians regard their own constituents, offensive jokes about pensioners, dismissive remarks about party colleagues, a culture of crude, sneering entitlement. But before we fall into the convenient narrative that this is a problem unique to Labour, let's be clear, this is a cross-party disease. The Conservatives are no better, and Reform UK, despite posturing as the fresh alternative, is led by a man who polls as badly as Keir Starmer and worse than Kemi Badenoch. There is, in fact, no choice. The two-party system has long since degraded into a cynical game where power is passed between factions of the same corrupt elite, and the public is offered a choice. Are you on this team? If you're not on this team, you must be on that team. And the media helpfully points us towards reform as though that is some viable alternative waiting in the wings. It's something we haven't tried yet. Let's try that. Meanwhile, the Lib Dems, perhaps stained by their leaders' fecal connections to the post office scandal, remain ignored. Well, the majority of the Lib Dems are actually fairly blameless, but also fairly inadequate. The electorate is not being offered a choice. They are being manipulated into an illusion of choice. And the filth running through Westminster is as noxious and as infectious as COVID-19. Corruption and laziness are endemic. They're not just in politics, but in the civil service, where inefficiency has become a default setting. Inefficiency has become a way of treating, of managing the public. Westminster operates as a machine of self-preservation, often inaccessible, with the Labour and the Conservative parties indistinguishable in their willingness to exploit power for their own ends. But the idea there's a uniparty is complete balderdash. The public is told that the general election represented a renewal, as if voting was somehow going to purge the sickness, as if voting was like sticking two fingers down your throat. But what is the alternative? When those in power see their role not as public servants but as political operators, as puppeteers, what faith can we place in electoral change? We need a clear-out. We need a renewal. And the Labour WhatsApp scandal is just one in a long line of betrayals. And the messages exchanged in private WhatsApp groups are no different from the public rhetoric of these politicians. They mask their disdain in polished statements written by other people generally, but the contempt remains the same. Barry Gardner put it succinctly, this is just about basic respect for other people. I think what people really hate is the idea that you present one face in public and in private you're a completely different person. And the hypocrisy is suffocating, and the voters know it. This isn't a call for Reform UK, nor for the return of Tory rule, nor for Labour's contrite apologies. It's a call for reform, real reform, not this ridiculous five-man party, but the entire system, a reform of the system. It's not a call for a purge of the House of Lords. That's the one bit in the parliamentary estate that actually works. This is the irony. The political class, the elected political class, has lost its way. And no amount of public relations managed sackings will change that. We shouldn't be marvelling at the way that Keir Starmer acts with decision. We should be astonished at the fact that this should have happened at all and it's been going on for so long. Only a fundamental shift in political culture will suffice. And that, I think, could be managed, but it means that the leaders of the, let's say, four main parties need to get together and they need to establish ground rules. It's not about the House of Commons voting, but the House of Commons should vote and it should expel those two Labour MPs from the House of Commons. If that were to happen, we would know that the House of Commons was recognising the filth that it was enabling. Because that's the reality. Anybody who sits next to these people is encouraging them. Anybody who doesn't throw them out of the door is endorsing what they say. And the same goes for local councils. If you've got a local council that doesn't do its job, get rid of it. Get rid of it, tooth, line and sinker. That's not the expression, is it? There we are, but do get rid of it. There's May elections coming up, if you're lucky enough to have them. But it doesn't matter. Write to your local MP, write to your local councillor, tell them that you don't accept the manana approach. That's for corrupt South American regimes from the 1980s. Even South America is better than this rubbish. Believe me. Europe went through its phase of being like this, so did Russia. And we are worse. We are worse. I've lived in corrupt countries. I know what it's like. Believe me. And Britain at the moment is worse than they were. Because you can't get anything done. You can't get anyone to take responsibility. It doesn't matter whether it's Avanti, Aviva, the Warwickshire County Council. They say one thing, they do another, and it's all about preserving their own self-importance. And if they finally acquiesce and offer you money, it's a one-off payment. It's a gift. It's an allowance they're making. It's an exception. But the reality is, these people are bloated with their own self-importance. We are getting it wrong. Not just in our political choices, though that may be part of the problem. I don't think it is the problem, by the way. We're getting it wrong by electing these self-important careerist politicians, whether that's in the council or whether that's in Parliament, and believing that the problem can be solved within the current framework. The House of Commons was designed to sit in the evening and to be staffed by people who maybe had day jobs, maybe had experience from a long time in industry or in business or in teaching. But what we've got is a whole pile of individuals who have no real experience of life, who have climbed up the greasy pole of political careerism, and they have nothing else to go back to. And they cling on and they cling on. And they are surrounded by, I was going to say yes men, but that's so sexist, but yes people, who are there to serve their needs. And their first need is self-survival. The Westminster system and the civil service which clings to it and which buttresses it is broken, its occupants irredeemably compromised. If politics is to serve the people, then we must rebuild from the ground up, and this local election which is coming up is the start of that process, if people take it seriously. Until then, we must continue gawping in dismay at the latest scandal, while the machinery of corruption churns on undisturbed. I honestly put my hand on my heart and say I don't know what the best approach is with the first-past-the-post system to seriously reform politics in Britain. But politics is broken, and without a strong, charismatic leader like a Thatcher, like a Michael Foot, like a Tony Benn, we are not going to find someone to lead us out of it from the front. That's the problem. And we've never really been in this position before. But in the last 20 or 30 years, was really since John Major, we've had leaders in the House of Commons, we've had leaders in local government particularly, who are careerist and dull because they are safe and because they can be manipulated and controlled and because they're terribly worried about their political career. And we pay them. And that may be the fundamental problem. We have professional politicians, and they're dull. And yes, as Angela Rayner said, they couldn't run a bath. They don't seem to know how to do their job, how to lead the people. We need a charismatic leader. We certainly don't have one in Keir Starmer. We certainly and absolutely don't have one in Kemi Badenoch. We don't have one in Ed Davey. No matter how much he sits in a boat or takes a ride in a river. But do we have one in Nigel Farage? I would say we don't. What we have in Nigel Farage is someone who's learned how to manipulate the media, which is much the same sort of thing. We need a charismatic and principled leader. And I don't see one in the House of Commons at the moment. And I'm really sorry. What I see is a wave of filth. And that saddens me really more than anything else I can possibly imagine, because I'm very interested in politics. I care about politics. And the important message to get across is not about teams. My team is better than the other team. There is a filth running through Westminster. Let me repeat, it's as noxious and as infectious as COVID. It's called corruption and laziness, and it's also taken over the civil service. And as for choice, when the leader of reform polls as badly as the current leader of the opposition, there is no choice. This is a call for reform, but not for the Reform Party. It's a call for a clear out. It's a call for a reform of the Commons, a cleaning of the Orgian stables. And yes, Labour is corrupt, filth through and through. But so is the Conservatives. And as for reform, let's put our cards on the table. Insignificant. 5 people. Insignificant, and with a leader who's not even popular. Come on.